The snow was falling heavily that day. He said he wanted to call off the engagement. I asked if he had thought it through. She didn't answer. Her gaze fixed behind me. My stepsister's face turned ashen under her gaze. His eyes, however, were tender, like a suitor's. Have you thought this through? I sat at the lower end of the table, while my father and stepmother were at the head. In these turbulent times, with natural disasters and human suffering, I had no desire for an elaborate coming-of-age ceremony. A simple family dinner at home with my parents and brothers would suffice. Though modest, with only family present, and only my stepmother to pin up my hair. It was, after all, my coming-of-age ceremony. He showed up unannounced, with no proper greetings or pleasantries, only to declare his intention to break off the engagement. Even with my mentor's teachings that had made me unperturbed by favor or disgrace, I couldn't help but feel a surge of anger. I looked at my father. He watched me silently. His eldest daughter was being humiliated. And in his eyes, it was merely a spectacle. I suddenly smiled and said, "Sir, did you inform your parents before coming today?" His face, as fair as a noble gentleman's, flushed red. Upon closer inspection, even his neck was red. Of course. They know. His voice rose a little. A mere show of bravado. I could hear the hollowness in his tone. So how could my father not? My younger brother, Ethan, abruptly stood up but was pressed back down by our elder brother. With our parents present, it wasn't his place to speak. I bowed to the young master and then instructed the servants. A house servant presented me with paper and ink, along with a treasure box. I didn't particularly enjoy calligraphy, but my mentor had forced me to copy texts daily to temper my character. And I had, surprisingly, developed good penmanship. It was fortunate for my mentor's guidance. Otherwise, even if no one saw my terrible handwriting today, it would still be a disgrace. With the brush, I quickly drafted a letter of disengagement and handed it to him, along with the betrothal gift. The young master hadn't expected it to happen so quickly. His refined features showed surprise. He held the items, unsure of what to do. I called a servant and, pointing at him, said, "Escort him out." The young master, Jasper Hayes, a renowned figure in the city of Everglen, was known for his elegant demeanor and ethereal beauty. His reputation and talent were sung about in the streets and taverns, and he frequented private quarters and entertainment houses. Yet, he never imagined he would be driven out with a broom. I stood quietly at the entrance, wrapped in a crimson cloak, watching others point fingers at this celebrated young man of Everglen. I saw his hands trembling. Snowflakes fell on him, mixing with mud, staining his immaculate white silk robe. "Mr. Hayes," I said. The Hayes and the Miller families have always been close. Our elders arranged our engagement at birth, without any unforeseen circumstances. We should have been married in 3 months. Today is my coming-of-age ceremony. You came uninvited, with no formal card, no gifts, and casually demanded to break off the engagement. The Miller family believes it has shown no disrespect. May I ask, sir, why you treat me so? Jasper Hayes's face turned increasingly pale. I wondered if I had seen it wrong. He was naturally fair-skinned. Standing beside him, I who usually spent time outdoors, appeared to compliment his delicate features. He whispered, "I didn't know today was your coming of age. I will apologize later." I asked, "There are still 3 months until the wedding. Are you breaking off our engagement because you have feelings for someone else?" He didn't answer, his gaze shifting behind me. I looked at him calmly, without emotion. "It seems my family is too humble for your esteemed house to associate with. Please inform your family and do not disturb the Miller family's future." The treasure box contained our betrothal gifts, which my late mother had kept and then passed on to me. I threw the box, hitting him on the forehead. I had held back some strength, but it still left his forehead bloody and made him appear even more disheveled. The heavy gates of the mansion closed. I turned to see my stepsister's pale face. Jasper's outburst had certainly ruined the atmosphere of my coming-of-age ceremony. I invited everyone to take their seats. It was freezing, and I feared the food would get cold. But my stepsister, Amy, knelt in the corridor, refusing to get up. Her birth mother, Mrs. Song, had witnessed the entire scene today and naturally knew something was amiss with her daughter. She also hurriedly knelt, fearing I would vent my anger on her daughter. I knew she was afraid of me. "My dear sister, why are you kneeling?" My father, now seated, asked my kneeling sister. Amy bowed her head to my father and said, "Father, your daughter has sinned. Today, young Master Hayes broke off the engagement, humiliating my sister. And it is connected to your daughter." My father simply hummed, his emotions unreadable. Amy continued, "When my sister and my second brother hadn't returned home, young Master Hayes often came to our house to study with my elder brother. Because my sister wasn't here when the young master first arrived, he mistook me for her. Later, he often came to play with my younger siblings and me. In the past, I only thought the young master was being kind to my sister and treating my siblings well. Who knew that half a month ago?" She stopped there, seemingly unable to speak further. Amy covered her face and wept. I twirled the teacup in my hand and said, "Aunties, please take the younger siblings back first. If I hear even a whisper of what Amy said today outside, I will have to see how many floggings your younger siblings can endure." My younger siblings chorused their agreement. My youngest sister stumbled over the threshold on her way out, trembling all over. Amy shivered. I remained silent. However, my stepmother, Mrs. couldn't bear it and said to Amy, "Child, you're still young. Don't catch a cold." The girl finally came in, but still dared not sit, instead kneeling as she spoke. "He snuck into my room at night, claiming to be deeply in love and vowing to marry no one else. I didn't dare to do such a wicked thing. He said he was being bullied by my sister and couldn't face it. As he spoke, he nearly forced himself upon me. If not for the maid's quick thinking, who entered the room, I would have immediately taken my own life. These past few days, I've been with my father in the camp, not daring to speak out. Today, he came to break off the engagement, and I am terrified, fearing he will do something even worse." I whispered a few instructions to my attendant, who nodded and discreetly left. Mrs. Song, seeing me silently sipping tea, immediately cowed out and said, "My lady, this servant is useless. I have spoiled Amy. I only beg you to consider Amy's young age and that she is your blood relative. Please forgive her. This servant will strictly discipline Amy and ensure she never again commits such disgraceful and immoral acts. I rubbed my brow and asked her. Auntie, do you remember your place? Mrs. Song trembled as she prostrated herself on the ground. I thought she understood. My mother had also told me when she was alive that Auntie came from a scholarly family but fell on hard times. Which is why she became a concubine. When my sister wasn't yet married, Amy stayed in my courtyard. I originally thought it was hard for you mother and daughter. So I didn't separate you. But now you've spoiled Amy. Auntie, I know you came from a scholarly family. So how did you raise Amy to be so timid, cowardly, and unable to distinguish right from wrong? As I spoke, I threw the teacup in my hand. Regardless of the moonlight, the teacup shattered, startling Mrs. Song, who trembled. Amy stopped crying from fright. I asked her, Auntie, did you know about this? Amy nodded, tears streaming down her face. He told you not to tell anyone. I sneered. An outsider. And your future brother-in-law forced his way into your room. My father and I weren't here. But your mother was. Why didn't you tell your mother about this instead of your aunt? And when your aunt told you not to tell, you actually didn't? You are the second daughter of the Marquis of Bolin, a noble lady from a military family. How can you have no backbone at all? If this happened in another family or at another time, it would be an unauthorized union. At that point, a white silk rope to hang yourself would be what you wished for. Amy was in tears. Mrs. Song pleaded. My lady. I laughed in anger. Does Auntie intend for her daughter to marry into the Hayes family? Young Master Hayes sneaking into a lady's room at night and ruining my sister Amy's reputation, is he some kind of virtuous person? How strict is this mansion? If she had made a sound and screamed, he might have been considered romantic. But Amy would have had to drown herself. I didn't realize Auntie was so muddled. Mrs. Song pressed her lips together several times but said nothing. Mrs. Shao, having seen enough, called Amy to rise. Amy timidly glanced at me. But my anger lingered. And my expression was not pleasant. She shivered again. Kneeling there, trembling. Mrs. Shao was not in a hurry. She personally descended from her seat and helped Amy up. Her tone gentle and soft. Amy, from now on, you will live in my courtyard and study with your brothers. Good child. Why belittle yourself? What have you done wrong? The mistress asked her. Did you make a mistake? Amy's tears had stopped. But she still dared not speak. Mrs. Zhao's gaze was gentle and focused. Amy whispered. I didn't make a mistake. Louder. I didn't make a mistake. My father also showed a gentle smile. My attendant returned and nodded to me. I said, My lord. My lady. Amy was startled today. Let her go back and rest. Mrs. Shao looked at my father. Seeing him nod, she gently said, Amy, go rest. You'll move into my courtyard today. Don't be afraid. Father and mother are here. Amy was led away by a maid, while Mrs. Song remained kneeling on the ground. Suddenly, she found strength and lunged at my father's feet, weeping and pleading. My lord, My lord. Amy is my child. You cannot let my lady take Amy away. My father kicked her hand away and said. The mistress is responsible for disciplining the children. You have raised my daughter like this. It is up to the mistress to decide how to handle this matter and you. He glanced at me and said. Amy. Come with me. I said. Yes. Sir. And followed him. Leaving all the complicated matters behind. Mrs. Shaw watched the father and daughter's retreating figures and sighed. She was only about 25 or 26 this year. The young family had declined early. And she had supported her mother alone. Later, she married into the Marquis of Boland's estate. Although she was experienced in human affairs and confident in her abilities, handling such a large household was truly overwhelming for her. She was still in the prime of her life. Yet she felt as if she was aging prematurely. Looking at Mrs. Song, who was almost crying herself unconscious, she said to her maid, Find a few strong women. Gag Mrs. Song. And confine her to the north courtyard. From this day forward, she is to copy scriptures and pray for Amy and is not to take a single step out. The maid acknowledged the order and left. I thought my father would take me to the study. But to my surprise, he led me to the city wall. Everglen City had its own curfew. But who dared to stop the governor's carriage? The snow fell even harder. The city was a vast expanse of white, with only the long, drawn-out sound of the night watchman's drum. I looked at the houses in the city. Occasionally, there were a few lights, suggesting that the common people had enough firewood for winter and didn't have to huddle together for warmth. As we ascended the city wall, my father's shoulders and head were covered in snowflakes. I was no different. Father and daughter stood together, resembling two snowmen. My father asked me, Amy, what do you see? I tried my best to open my eyes. There was only the light reflected by the white snow. Father, I am dull-witted, I honestly replied. My father sighed and said, Do you know how your father started? I knew that although the Miller family came from the Miller clan of Clearwater, my father was not granted his official position through family connections. In the past, my father's branch of the family declined early due to an incompetent family head. His parents died young, and as an orphan with a widowed mother, he suffered much bullying. It was thanks to my grandmother's self-reliance, with her excellent needlework skills, that she managed to raise my father with great difficulty. Her eyes were ruined from overwork. My father did not succeed in his studies and was unwilling to remain farming. So he simply left home to join the army, determined to become a formidable man. At that time, this great empire was in dire straits, with internal rebellions and external barbarians. My father had lofty ambitions and great courage. He achieved repeated successes on the battlefield, forging a career with his own hands. At that time, his flourishing success, like a raging fire, aroused the emperor's suspicion in the capital. The emperor found an excuse to strip my father of his military power. My father took his children south and became the governor of Yuezhou. He has governed Yuezhou for 3 years now, and the administration is harmonious, with everything thriving. The people sing his praises. My father didn't dwell on my answer. Instead, he asked another question. My daughter, young Master Hayes, is graceful and elegant, adored by all young ladies in their chambers. Although there were improprieties, why did you discard him like old shoes? It was true. Although Yuezhou was remote, it was vast. The Everglen Hayes family had once been among the top 10 noble families. Although they had declined somewhat in recent years, outsiders still considered them a distinguished lineage. Their family members were like orchids and jade trees, a family of splendor. And young Master Hayes, though not ambitious, was unrestrained and talented, with a handsome appearance. If my mother had not gone to the capital back then and befriended Mrs. Hayes at first sight, perhaps I would not have been the one to marry him. I replied. From Everglen City to Yuezhou, and even to the capital, everyone believed young Master Hayes was the man of their dreams. But to me, he is merely a hypocrite who deceives the world and steals fame. Father, it's not like that, I said. Back then, my mother and Mrs. Hayes promised our marriage, arranging for the Hayes heir and the Miller daughter. But there is more than one Miller daughter. If young Master Hayes truly loved Amy, he could have approached my father and explained his reasons. My father is not inflexible. Nor is he a slave to romantic love. Why couldn't he have arranged a happy union? But he first snuck into my sister's room, intending to defile her, and then ruined the reputation of my coming-of-age ceremony and the Miller family. Such a person, under the guise of being unrestrained and wild, actually commits heartless and unrighteous deeds. He appears upright on the surface but is rotten inside. Such a villain is despicable. My father finally looked at me, watching for a long time, and then chuckled softly. You are not like your father, nor like your mother, nor like your grandmother, I whispered. If only I could have inherited a fraction of grandmother's fortune. Grandmother raised my father by herself, waiting for him to return home, earning her the title of a noble lady. My father was a formidable man, but not a good son. The inner courtyard was a mess with wives and concubines. My mother was not resourceful and had a gentle nature. Grandmother was so troubled that her health worsened, and she passed away after only a few good years. Thinking of this, I felt a bit self-mocking. Even if my father didn't smile. A child doesn't speak ill of their father's faults. Isn't my current behavior also unfilial? My father asked me. Do you know why young Master Hayes came? He had no formal invitation. Nor did he inform his parents, but rushed to break off the engagement with you. This is also what I don't understand. Although the Hayes family has declined in recent years, their ancestral foundation remains. Why would the Hayes family act so disrespectfully? Please enlighten me. Father. My father took a silk scroll from his sleeve. This silk scroll was inlaid with gold and jade, bright and shimmering. Yet I wondered if I should kneel. This is the emperor's decree. It should have been kept at home and worshipped daily. Why would my father carry it like this? My father said. There's no need for us to kneel. My daughter. The snow had stopped. I used the light from the snow-covered ground to read each word. But it was difficult. After reading it, my heart turned cold. On that imperial decree, written in the emperor's own hand, was an order for my Miller daughter to marry by alliance. My father's voice was indifferent, not angered by the words of the imperial decree. The Ruan presented a state letter to the court, promising to submit as a vassal state and pay tribute annually, and specifically requested a Miller daughter for a marriage alliance. My teeth bit so hard they almost bled. My father was a military general who rose through warfare. Yet, after a 700-league journey to Rouen, He returned victorious to the Grading dynasty, only to face the emperor's suspicion. Now, his own daughter was to be sent for a marriage alliance. What were the Ruren thinking? No one in the civil and military court knew. Yet they compromised. For that bit of suspicion over his meritorious service. They would rather send the daughter of a meritorious general to be humiliated by the enemy, exchanging it for a tenuous respite, rather than entrusting the military power to my father to secure peace for the court and the land. Today, they concede 5 cities. Tomorrow, 10 cities. Are all these court officials? Is the emperor on that throne? Spineless? My father said. You have an engagement with the Hayes family. This marriage alliance will surely fall upon Amy. I fear that young Master Hayes's intention was to break off the engagement with you. This way, as the elder sister, you can bear the responsibility of the marriage alliance. And Amy can be spared from disaster. I sneered. I hit him too lightly today. My father asked me. If you were to go for the marriage alliance, what would you do? I fell silent, carefully pondering my father's meaning. I am my father's eldest legitimate daughter. Among my many siblings, only my elder brother and I were personally taught by my father. Later, my mother met with misfortune and passed away. I fled with my younger brother, traveling 1,000 li to find my father. My father even ordered that my daily life be spent in his courtyard, personally teaching me archery and horsemanship, and inquiring about my studies. With such favoritism, he surely wouldn't want to send me for a marriage alliance. But what was the reason for my father's question? What kind of answer did my father want to hear? The wind picked up. I said, if I were to marry by alliance, and luckily survive, at most 5 years, the Ruren would have a Han Chinese queen mother. My father laughed heartily. As expected of my daughter, you always look to the future, not just the present. But your father asks you. If your father doesn't want to send you for a marriage alliance, how can we resolve the current predicament? I pondered for a moment and said, I have 3 strategies to offer. The lowest strategy is for father to immediately arrange another engagement for me, or find someone to take my place, or let Amy go for the marriage alliance. The middle strategy is for father to enter the court and debate, using his remaining military power and prestige to pressure the emperor. As for the best strategy, my father's eyes gleamed. The best strategy is to break free? I must have had 2 cups of wine at the banquet earlier. I must be drunk or mad. I bowed low, my blood boiling. I heard myself say, for the best strategy, please rebel. My lord. My knees hurt from kneeling. Even though I was warmly dressed, I couldn't stop the pervasive north wind from chilling me to the bone. Yet, my blood was still boiling. My father laughed loudly and personally helped me up. My father was fighting on the battlefield before I was born. But at this moment, I saw that unparalleled hero. He said, then let's rebel. In April, an imperial envoy arrived with an imperial decree, bestowing upon me the title of princess and ordering me to marry the Ruren. My father, in a fit of rage, accused the envoy of falsely transmitting the imperial decree and had him beheaded. Then, he raised the banner of our Miller family army. I followed my father up the city wall, dressed in military attire, as heroic as any man. He pointed to the 3,000 soldiers stationed outside the city and said, people call them the defeated army. But I call them treacherous officials. The envoy's head hung on the city wall. The lead general was enraged but feared Everglen City's strong army and high walls. He tried to persuade us. Marquis, your defiance of imperial authority is a grave crime, punishable by the extermination of your entire clan. I stood on the city wall and, like a man, formally saluted General Zheng. In the past, when fighting the Ruren, you and my father shared the bond of comrades. Today, His Majesty is deceived by treacherous officials. There are villains in the court who force me to go beyond the pass for a marriage alliance. A national disgrace. General, you allow these villains to deceive the emperor and destabilize the government. This is disloyalty. You use your skills to protect the nation and its people, leading your soldiers to intimidate your comrades and send your daughter to be humiliated by the Ruren. This is injustice. My father often spoke of the past to my brothers at home. And every time I heard it, my blood boiled. I admired the general's noble character even more. Only today do I realize that the general is nothing more than this. It was my father who misjudged people and made a mistake. General Jing seemed quite angered. His voice trembled as he roared. Your father and I are comrades. Your father has not spoken. Yet you, a mere child, dare to overstep your bounds. I said. My father is a hero of this world. General, how can a disloyal and unjust person be worthy of speaking with my father? General Zheng was probably very angry. But he stubbornly said, for the peace of the nation, even if I am unjust. Have you no end? I merely chuckled. To secure the peace of the nation with just me is certainly a good bargain. However, I wonder if the general has read on the 6 states. If you concede 5 cities today, and 10 cities tomorrow, then you can have one night of peace. When you wake up and look around, the Qin army will be there again. Therefore, the land of the feudal lords is limited. But the desires of the tyrannical Qin are insatiable. The more you serve them, the more urgent their aggression becomes. How can this be resolved? General Jin covered his face with his hand, probably ashamed to face my father. However, my father and I refused to leave the city, and the envoy's head hung on the wall. Although we claimed to be acting to remove corrupt officials from the emperor's side, everyone knew the Miller family had rebelled. Since that was the case, then so be it. In the rustling wind, I heard my father's hearty laughter. My child, are you afraid? I gripped my bow tightly, my voice ringing clear and strong. I have no fear. To face such a grand spectacle as a woman, even death holds no regret. My father said. Your father and I will make a wager on this current predicament. I asked. Is there a prize? My father said. If you win, your father will give you a gift. My father chuckled. You cannot lose. I cannot lose. My gaze fixed on the general below the inner city wall. He was my father's comrade from the old days, when they fought the Ruren. He was a talented general who had fought his way through countless battles. He was my father's sworn brother, a close friend who sent gifts every New Year and holiday, and a confidant with whom my father shared drinks and stories of the past. But he was also the one who strongly advocated for sending me for a marriage alliance. Like an executioner at our nation's gate, I released the bowstring. The sound of the arrow piercing the air vanished in the wind. But his body fell, his face still showing surprise. Darkness enveloped him. The last words he heard were, General, If your wife and parents need care, I will provide for them. Everyone knew that the Marquis of Bolin had once incurred the emperor's suspicion. And with the instigation of malicious individuals, he was eventually stripped of his military power and sent to govern a remote region. The emperor, in his exceptional grace, granted him 800 personal guards. If it was merely to force a miller daughter into a marriage alliance, 3,000 soldiers would have been more than enough. But no one knew how my father, upon arriving in the vast region of Yuezhou, with its dilapidated army, endless rebels, and impoverished cities, used iron-fisted methods to transform Yuezhou into its present state. No one investigated where those captured rebels eventually went. General Zheng was killed by my arrow. The remaining soldiers scattered in disarray. However, he did possess some skill, having likely made arrangements beforehand. After his death, his deputy immediately took his place and ordered an attack on the city. My father sighed. As expected of Bo Xian, he truly has some talent. His soldiers are quite extraordinary. Bo Xian was General Zhang's courtesy name. I had no strength to distinguish my father's words. Only my scalp tingled from the fierce fighting, and my blood boiled. I wished I could personally join the battle. My father glanced at me and said to his attendant, "Bring me my spear." The attendant returned in a moment. My father threw the long spear to me and said, "This is the gift I want to give you." I saluted my father in military fashion. My father said to me, "Take it and go out of the city. If you cannot win, do not return." I descended the city wall and rode out of the city on horseback. The deputy general was a man with a resolute face. I didn't know him, but I knew he was capable. If he wasn't capable, he wouldn't have reacted so quickly and taken over the general's position in such a short time. I saluted him respectfully and said, "General, your humble niece has been rude today. I hope you will forgive my offense." He shook his head and said, "Each serves his own master. What offense is there?" "Lady, please," I responded and charged forward. The spear is the king of all weapons. Though it was new in my hand today, it felt as if I had used it for years. Extremely handy. That deputy general was very capable. And we fought several rounds, with neither side gaining a clear advantage. I sat calmly on my horse. My horse snorted. He looked at me calmly. "You are different from any lady I have ever met. Good child. Today I will teach you how to fight." My spear techniques were taught by my father. The person before me was capable, had military achievements, and possessed experience in fighting others. However, after a few rounds, I dismounted him with a single spear thrust. His face showed the same surprise as the dead general, but he had no chance to ask why. I held his head high. The soldiers finally faltered. The general was dead. The deputy general was dead. There was no one left to lead them. Morale plummeted. Finally, someone dropped their weapon and fled in all directions. Today's battle was my victory. As the sun set, I stood horizontally with my spear, looking back at the city wall. My father stood there. I couldn't see his face clearly, but I knew he approved of me. The soldiers who had come out with me looked at me without scrutiny or doubt. The deputy general dismounted, kneeling on one knee. The attendants dismounted, kneeling on one knee. Hundreds of people knelt on one knee. I gripped the long spear in my hand. After today, The miller daughter, Amy, will be known as a rebel, a traitor for all ages, a femme fatale, a demon of the nation. But Amy Miller will also be a founding hero, a female warrior, a heroine, a hero of this world. Amy Miller will finally be renowned throughout the land. In the spring of the third year of Hongyu in the Great Qing dynasty, the Marquis of Bolan defied the imperial decree, shocking the entire court. News reached the capital, Everglen City. A month later, when the emperor learned that all Ruan envoys had been executed in the imperial guest house, no one knew who had done it. The court treated the Ruan like a father. If not for ancestral rules, these envoys would have resided in the imperial palace. Now that the envoys were dead, the emperor retreated into his inner chambers, indulging in elixirs and beautiful women. Court officials were divided into several factions, wrangling and vying for power, seeking wealth for themselves, safety for their descendants, and eternal worship for their ancestors. Within a month of the news reaching the capital, our Miller family army swept through, capturing 5 cities in succession. The court had been peaceful for too long. The nobles in court knew how to live extravagantly, how to feast and revel night after night, how to squander wealth on frivolous entertainment, and how to compete in luxury for 6 generations at the Terrace City. Their soft lives had weakened the nobles' bones, and their gentle ways had dulled the spirit of the court's civil and military officials. To become an official, they spent money. To kill people, they spent money. Even when the enemy was at the city gates, they spent money. It was like this with the Ruan. And it was like this with my father. Heavy taxes drove the common people to desperate straits. Some starved to death in the fields. Others took up arms. I had seen corpses floating in the water. I had seen the Ruan slaughter common people like cattle and sheep. I had seen people sell their wives and children, believing it was a good outcome. I myself had gone 3 days and 3 nights without food. It wasn't fast. I love money, so I refused to go for a marriage alliance, taking my dowry and 15 border cities with me. My father also loves money, and he is fast. The imperial envoy sent by the panicked court reprimanded him, calling him a rebel and a traitor. But my father executed him on the spot. The subsequent imperial envoys, however, came with 12 parts reverence and 30 chests of treasures, respectfully begging my father's forgiveness. His Majesty was willing to withdraw the decree ordering his eldest daughter to marry by alliance and implored him to return to court, as long as he withdrew his troops. My father bowed facing north, accepted the treasures. But then, the following month, ordered an attack on the next city. As long as the treacherous officials are not eliminated, this minister will not retreat. I looked at the restless crowd, feeling a rare sense of bewilderment. Why was there an army so easy to defeat? Why were there soldiers who fled before even starting to fight? Why were there common people who trembled with fear at the sight of soldiers? Why were there cities with such lax military discipline? Along the way, people often praised me for my masterful military tactics. But I knew that the biggest enemy was not the imperial court, but the rebel armies. My father asked me if I was afraid. I replied, "What is frightening is not the killing, but the evil spirits in the court." Attacking the court cities only took a few days, but reclaiming the rebel forces would take several years. I never underestimated the power of the common people. So, every time I captured a city, I would manage that area well, taking over official yamen, inventorying assets, counting the population, stabilizing public sentiment, and investigating wrongful cases. In just 3 years, there were even rumors that the Miller family had been granted the mandate of heaven. Under the Miller family's governance, military discipline was strict. The common people were content, and taxes were reduced. Under the court's governance, corruption was rampant. Bodies littered the fields, and the people suffered greatly. I turned and returned to my tent, bowing before my father's respected position in the tent, and also before my esteemed mentor, Master May. He was a great sage of his time. On my first birthday, he emerged from seclusion to give me a name, teach me lessons, and instruct me in military strategy and diplomacy. After I returned home at the age of 12, he even persuaded my father to keep me by his side to avoid the chaos of the inner courtyard. He was well known in his time, and everyone respected him as Duke May. I again bowed respectfully to my mentor as a disciple until he permitted me to sit. Master May handed me a silk scroll, gesturing for me to read it. I read it carefully, and my heart turned cold. The Ruran had launched a large-scale invasion right across the river, at the very pass leading to the capital. The Ruran had invaded. In the past, my father's informants in the city had killed the Ruran envoys to make the long journey difficult, tricking the Ruran into thinking that the court had not yet finalized negotiations, and thus they should observe for a while to avoid being attacked from both front and back. By the time the Ruran learned of the internal strife in the Grading dynasty, General Su Xian had already reached the border and was firmly stationed in the Central Army camp. Aside from the Miller family's forces on the Ruran border, there was also the independent King Shui Chongshan of Fengyang. Although there were skirmishes between the two sides, it was impossible for them to watch the Ruran plunder without restraint. This way, the border could remain peaceful, and my father could focus on the front lines with peace of mind. Su Xian was a disciple of my father. He was skilled in warfare and knew how to conceal his abilities. When the Grading dynasty was negotiating peace with the Ruran, to avoid unrest, the emperor issued a decree recalling Su Xian. When our Miller family launched our campaign to remove corrupt officials, he secretly left the capital and returned to the border. Although his stance was unclear, he ensured that the Ruran did not invade. Su Xian would never surrender. So, I asked my two esteemed elders, "What about Shui Chongshan?" My father's face was solemn. Master May said, "Shui Chongshan knows that the Miller family aims for, and a battle is inevitable. If the Miller family truly ascends to power, he would be a rebel. Why not conspire with the Ruran? Then he might have a chance to contend for the throne." I pondered for a long time, then voiced my doubt. This official does not understand. General Su faces two enemies. Even with unparalleled talent, it would be difficult for him to overcome. How should the emperor decide? My father snorted coldly. How to decide? My child, why don't you take another look? This is an imperial decree that your father ordered someone to intercept. I took the bright yellow silk scroll, only to see it filled with reprimanding words, ordering Su Xian to immediately return to the capital and suppress my Miller family's rebels. My heart grew cold from reading it. Although it wasn't the first time I had witnessed the emperor's callousness and cruelty, I still felt disheartened. How could such a muddled monarch perpetuate his dynasty? My father asked me, "My child, what do you intend to do?" I placed the imperial decree on the table. rose, and came to the center, kneeling and bowing deeply, speaking earnestly. I respectfully request my lord to dispatch troops to assist General Su. My father said. Su Xian is a cunning man. Although he is my disciple, he does not support my cause. Playing the role of a fence-sitter, he guards the border. And no matter who wins, he will be a meritorious official. Such a petty man. My child. Do you still wish to help him? I said. General Su is a petty man, but not a treacherous official. Although he is a fence-sitter, although he does not take a stance or choose a side, he truly protects the country and its people. For 3 years, the border has been stable, and the common people have suffered far fewer hardships. He does not owe the Miller family, but the Miller family cannot repay him. The court cannot save him. I will save him. Yongning County was the last barrier defending the capital. The prefect was a capable man. He stubbornly defended the county for 3 days without provisions or troops. He was a virtuous talent, and I naturally wanted to persuade him to surrender. The Grading dynasty is without principle. The muddled emperor is without principle. Why bother staking your life on a sinking ship? Why not join us and accomplish a great feat? The prefect replied. I have enjoyed the emperor's bounty, and I must serve the emperor loyally. Now, fate is not with the Grading, but it is my destiny. I am willing to die to repay the Grading. I instructed my attendants to attack the city. Yongning County finally fell. I ascended the city wall. The prefect had already committed suicide. At that moment, my attendant came to find me and said, the prefect's mansion is solemn. All 13 members of his family committed suicide by poison. Their faces calm and composed in death. I bent down and straightened the prefect's official robes. He had a gentle face. If not for being born in troubled times, he would surely have been a calm scholar, sipping tea and reading by the window. His wife would mend his clothes, and his children would peek out from the window, playfully trying to skip their lessons. I didn't understand why he, despite the emperor's wicked deeds, chose to entrust his fate to a destined to fall. Muddled era. I didn't understand such a person, but I respected such a person. I said to my attendant, bury them well. I did not stay in Yongning County to handle the trivial matters, but instead rode straight to Everglen City. 300 years ago, the ancestors of the Gradingly family founded the nation here. 300 years later, Amy Miller of the Miller family knocked on the city gates. I rode my horse forward. It was already autumn, and a chilling drizzle fell upon me. My blood was boiling, and my hot hands tightly gripped the crimson flame spear my father had given me. The city gates swung open. I saw the panicked common people scattering in all directions, the fearful noble children peeking out cautiously, and blood flowing in the streets, seeping into the mud and cracks in the stone. I had come through a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood to achieve a great endeavor. Looking far into the distance, thick smoke billowed from the imperial palace. Loyal officials had been demoted and exiled by the corrupt emperor, and loyal guards had died under enemy blades. I ordered the palace gates sealed, the population counted, the government offices taken over, and the financial records, water conservancy, and agricultural land data thoroughly inspected. The eunuch, guarded by soldiers, fearfully told me that the emperor, realizing all was lost, first massacred his concubines and children. Then, donning his imperial robes and wielding the imperial sword. He went to Phoenix Terrace, laughing wildly. I watched the thick smoke and flames from Phoenix Terrace, knowing the emperor had immolated himself. In ancient times, King Zhou of Shang immolated himself on Deer Terrace. Today, the last emperor of Ying immolated himself on Phoenix Terrace. King Zhou was a tyrannical ruler reviled in historical records. The current emperor is a tyrannical ruler who will soon be reviled in historical records. I wonder, after thousands of years, how will future generations judge these two? Who will be considered the worse? I asked the eunuch. What is the scenery like at Phoenix Terrace? The eunuch prostrated himself and said, with white jade steps and tranquil springs, rare animals and exotic plants, it is more beautiful than a fairyland. It was a pity that such a beautiful place was being consumed by fire. Since the capital had fallen, the Miller family's claim of removing corrupt officials naturally became moot. Fortunately, our administration had been well managed over the years, so there was no immediate opposition. The former emperor was like a sieve. Loyal and upright officials were all filtered out, either killed, demoted, or exiled. Only sycophants remained. I ordered the government offices sealed and old cases reviewed. Those who deserved to die were killed, and those who deserved to be released were set free. Only one person troubled me, the Grand Justice, Master Feng. He was truly a breath of fresh air among officials, upright, unyielding, and proud. After the offices were sealed, he furiously denounced the Miller family as rebels and was thrown into prison, where he began a hunger strike. Clearly unwilling to associate with me, I carefully read his case file. Walking through the streets and alleys, all I heard were praises for him. He had stood up to powerful families for the common people, defied the emperor, and contradicted his own mentor. His home was simple and humble. His relatives had gone against him. His children were mature for their age. I went to his home and saw his wife tending to the vegetable garden, wearing simple clothes and a wooden hairpin. Her expression calm and serene. Her child, already 12 years old, was reading aloud nearby. The way of great learning lies in illuminating the illustrious virtue, in loving the people, and in resting in the highest good. To know where to rest is to have a fixed purpose. Having a fixed purpose, one can be tranquil. Being tranquil, one can be at ease. Being at ease, one can deliberate. Deliberating, one can attain. Things have their roots and branches. Affairs have their end and beginning. To know what is first and what is last will lead one near the way. The wife came toward me, bowed, and respectfully invited me to enter and sit. Then she poured me tea. She said, "A noble guest has arrived. Allow your humble servant to tidy herself before receiving you." I said, "Madam, there's no need. Yet." She went away with a gentle smile. I took a sip of tea. The tea leaves were very coarse, but the room was filled with the clear scent of poverty. I suspected this was the only tea they had. The house was neither luxurious nor large, but it was well maintained and offered shelter from the wind and rain. When she returned, she was still dressed in simple cloth clothes, clean and neat, with a plain silver hairpin adorning her hair. It was extremely simple yet elegant. She bowed to me and said, "My humble abode is crude, and my hospitality is lacking. Please forgive me, noble guest." I was somewhat unsure of the Feng family's intentions. Master Feng was on a hunger strike. Upright and unyielding. Yet his wife treated me with courtesy and grace. Was this intentional on the Feng family's part? Or had they resigned themselves to death? Madame Feng said to me. This humble servant understands the noble guest's intention. However, I must refuse. My husband loves his country and its people. And neither I nor my son can persuade him otherwise. I knew that Master Feng was a loyal and upright man. And I held no hope of persuading Madame Feng. But if that is the case, Madam, why bother with such warm hospitality? Madame replied. My husband greatly admired the Yongning prefect's character. When the noble guest breached Yongning County, he had already resigned himself to death. Since my husband is like this, how dare I not obey? This house has only my son and me. Before my husband left, he said that although the Miller family were rebels, they were not traitors. Under their rule, the common people were all prosperous and happy. If not for the collapse of the dynasty and the ruin of the land, he would surely treat the Miller family as honored guests. Now that my husband is imprisoned for the nation, I and my son will surely not be spared. My warm hospitality to the noble guest is merely a clear gesture to the noble guest. Not for the sake of the nation. I silently looked at the simple courtyard. I rose, intending to leave. Madame Feng escorted me to the door. I bowed to her respectfully and said, Madam, your integrity is exceptional. Please accept my bow. Madame returned the bow. I said, after I leave today, I will visit Master Feng in prison. If I can preserve him, then please, the Feng family, strive for the lives of all common people. If not, I will surely ensure the safety of you and your son. In the future, if your son succeeds in his studies, he will have the potential to be a chief minister. If he does not succeed in his studies, he can live in seclusion in the countryside and enjoy 3 generations of peace. I hope that Madam and young Master will live in peace and happiness from now on, and not fail Master Feng's integrity. Madam choked up, her eyes welling with tears. Wiping her tears with her hand, she said, this humble servant respectfully obeys the noble guest's command. The noble guest is a heaven-sent talent, born in troubled times, and has achieved great success in founding this enterprise. I hope that when the noble guest ascends to a high position in the future, you will remember the suffering of the common people and respond to the mandate of heaven by worrying for all people. I swore to her. This is my ambition. I will never forget it. I turned and left. I went to the prison and met Master Feng. He was indeed a praiseworthy and virtuous official. He sat upright in prison, his clothes clean, his hair neatly tied. Though he was in a damp prison, he carried himself with a calm demeanor. The soldiers guarding him, having received my instructions, dared not disrespect the master. The prison cell was clean. When I entered, I saw the soldiers bringing freshly prepared food. Seeing me, they quickly saluted. Has the master still not eaten? The soldier replied. Yes, sir. The master has been in prison for 5 days and has not touched food or water. My brothers and I buy fresh dishes from the restaurant every day and offer them. But the master refuses to eat, so we can only take them away. I ordered a pot of wine to be brought into the prison. Master Feng did not open his eyes. I did not mind. I placed 2 wine cups on the table and respectfully knelt, saying to him, Master Feng, I came earlier to visit your residence and spoke with your wife and son for a while. Master Feng remained unmoved. I filled a wine cup and said, I have a question. May I ask Master to enlighten me? He was silent for a moment. Then looked at me and asked, General, you are a person destined by heaven. And your esteemed mentor is a great sage of this era. I wonder how I can enlighten you. I saw that his face was pale. And these 2 days would likely be his limit. I poured the wine down my throat. This was wine from a Western-style tavern. And the taste wasn't particularly good. But the journey was difficult. And supplies were scarce. Being able to drink such wine was already a rarity. So what right did I have to be picky? I asked. All the civil and military officials in the former Qing dynasty court were useless. Merely occupying their positions. Master, being among them, knows the inside story even better. I do not understand why a man as upright and unyielding as you became the Grand Justice. And yet never suffered punishment. The court is corrupt and rotten. And those who are clear-headed should be the first to die. Feng Qing probably didn't expect such a question and actually smiled. Though his smile carried a hint of reluctance and powerlessness. The emperor is without principle. And his ministers are treacherous. They always need a target to appease the common people and manage their lives. So that there can be a glimmer of light in this dark world. It's a pity that although he understands small principles, he cannot break free. I mused. They hate the master to the bone. Yet they cannot do without the master. Is it because this overwhelming public opinion frightens them? Feng Qing replied. Exactly. In the past, I once publicly beat up a powerful young nobleman who was bullying the common people. The noble families wanted to punish me. But the common people protected me. After I left office, the common people sent 10,000 petitions to my mentor, requesting my appointment to the Grand Justice. The common people rejoiced, for their lives were about to improve. They finally welcomed an upright official. They no longer had to suffer oppression with nowhere to appeal. I had walked around after entering the city. A blind old woman held my hand and said, General, please release Master Feng. He is a good man. A blacksmith told me. If not for Master Feng's help, my daughter would have been taken by the noble family's son. And her life would have been uncertain. General, please take my life and release Master Feng. A maiden washing clothes told me. General, if not for Master Feng, I would have been bullied by ruffians and drowned myself in the river. Please spare Master Feng. General, a widow holding a child told me. General, Master Feng helped my son and me reclaim the property that was forcibly taken from us. Master Feng is a good man. The bean milk vendor said. General, once I stayed open late, blocking the path of a noble family. And if not for Master Feng, I would have died under their horses. I saw Feng Qing's surprised expression. Only then realizing that tears were streaming down my face. I raised my hand to wipe them away and said to Feng Qing, Master, since you are unwilling to serve as an official, then please leave. Seeing his silence, I continued. In the past, I never believed there were people like you in the court. Now that I have met you, I realize there is still light in this world. As Master said, though I am a rebel, I am not a traitor. I was unwilling to kill Master before. And now I cannot bear to kill Master. Since that is the case, Master should leave and reunite with his wife. Feng Qing smiled at me and said, General, Your integrity is noble. But Feng is unappreciative and wishes to perish with the great Ing. I stood up and questioned him. Master, do you serve the great Ing or the common people? Feng Qing asked me. What's the difference? I replied. The Yongning prefect was loyal to the great Ing. On the day the city fell, his entire family committed suicide, facing death calmly without resentment. I respect that master wishes to die for the country. However, because I practice benevolent governance and enforce military discipline, and because your wife treated me with courtesy, and after our thorough discussion today, it is clear that your loyalty is to the common people. If that is the case, what is the difference between my Miller family ruling the world and the Lee family ruling the world? Master, serve as an official and see if my Miller family is an exception. It is better to make clear choices than to die unjustly and leave regrets in prison. Feng Qing looked at me, his gaze peculiar. What use do I truly have that makes the general treat me so? Indeed, my father said there were many capable and virtuous people. Why cling to one Feng Qing? I said to him. Master, I too have been bullied. The eldest daughter of the Marquis of Bolin is an astonishing woman, who studied under a great sage of her time and learned archery, horsemanship, and martial arts. She wears men's clothing, is prone to conflict, and is ruthless. My father has loved me for 20 years. But he once pointed at me and called me wolf-hearted. My elder brother has loved me for 20 years. But he also sat separately from me, unable to bear looking at me. My younger brother, Ethan, fled 1,000 li with me. But after returning home, he secluded himself in his room, unwilling to see me. My younger siblings all respect me, but they fear me more. My aunts dare not cause trouble. I am insidious. I am ruthless. As the eldest child, I never loved my younger siblings. At 5 years old, I could push my sister into a lake. I often caused trouble and fought when studying at the academy. I drained the pot of wine and recounted my journey to Master Feng. Rambling and disjointed. I was almost 20. The past was unbearable, weighing heavily on my heart. The person before me was a rare, wise, and virtuous talent in this world. He was loyal, benevolent, loved by the people, and incorruptible. I should not have been like this. The alcohol fumes rose. I asked the master, what is a good person? What is a bad person? When I was 10 years old, my hometown of Clearwater suffered from drought and locusts. Before, when I read historical records, I would see that in years of famine, the people suffered greatly. And though I felt pity, I could hardly imagine it. Now, it seems I may have had the sentiment of why don't they eat meat? So, during the Great Famine, people cannibalized each other. That year, my mother, my brother, and I were at home observing mourning for my deceased grandmother. The court issued 9 directives, and my father had no choice but to go to Yuezhou to take office. My mother ordered the aunts and younger siblings to accompany him. And my elder brother, being the eldest legitimate son, naturally had to go as well. Only my mother, my brother, and I were left at home. Then came the great disaster. The common people had no harvest. Grass roots and tree bark were eaten clean. Their throats coughed up blood, and their rough skin cracked into crevices. People turned their gaze to the yellow earth boys in the fields. Their cheeks were emaciated, skin and bones, but their bellies were greatly swollen. They cried out for their mothers. "Mother, it hurts." But there was nothing to be done. Their fathers and mothers were also like that. Emaciated like skeletons. Dry like yellow earth. With swollen bellies. Hideous and terrifying. I secretly snuck out and ran home with all my might. My trembling voice making my mother raise the courtyard walls. Instructing the house servants to strengthen security. And telling someone to hitch a carriage to find my father. In a famine, there are no human disasters. In a famine, people eat people. But my mother sternly rebuked me, calling me wolf-hearted, selfish and greedy, and ruthless and cold-blooded. Yes, I was the daughter of the Marquis of Bolin, born with fine clothes and rich food, unable to see the suffering of the common people. Since my father placed such great hopes on me, how could I watch my clan and the common people starve to death in the streets and do nothing? I knelt in the corridor, crying and begging. "Mother, don't give away all the grain for relief. Those who know we have grain will come to snatch it. Don't send out the house servants to appease the common people. They will know that our household is vulnerable, with only women and children. Don't personally go to distribute relief. They will know that Madam is kind-hearted. The Miller mansion will fall into danger." My mother shoved me away, accusing me of being worse than a beast. Yes. Everyone in the world is good. The city praised Madam Miller as virtuous and benevolent. As long as we ate a little less. As long as we weren't extravagant. As long as we sent out enough people. Everyone would overcome the difficulties together. And the famine would pass. She made my brother and me distribute porridge on the street, making me see what those who couldn't get enough food looked like. I didn't feel ashamed. I only felt fear. Those people weren't looking at benefactors. They were looking at food. The Miller family became prosperous because of my father. Naturally wealthy. But no matter how wealthy, how could it support all the famine victims in the city? My father sent people to find us. But my mother refused. My mother said, "The Miller family is the Miller family of Clearwater. As the head of the Miller family, how can I abandon the people here?" From that moment, I knew my mother was destined to die. Her kindness was a form of cruelty. She ignored the fact that she, a woman, and her 3 children, were powerless against this world. She didn't understand the principle of gradual progress. She became carried away by a few praises from the disaster victims. Not only did she want to give porridge, but she also wanted to give dry rice. When the grain ran out, she would pawn her jewelry to exchange for money to relieve the victims and buy grain. Without my father's army to suppress them. Without my father's iron-fisted methods. Without my father's wisdom and talent. She could do nothing. That night, the Miller mansion was surrounded. The storeroom was plundered. My brother and I hid in the rockery in the pond, barely escaping being plundered and eaten. My brother and I hid for a full 2 days before daring to come out and search for my mother. My mother had only one breath left, instructing me to go to Yuezhou to find my father. She made me swear to take good care of my brother. I closed my eyes and left with my brother, not looking back. That spoiled little fatty struggled and roared, wanting to take my mother with him. I mercilessly slapped him. On the day my brother and I turned 1 year old, the sky was filled with brilliant clouds. A fortune-teller came from afar and asked for a cup of wine. He pointed at me and said, This girl is no ordinary person. He would never have imagined that before I achieved a great feat. I would almost be picked up and sold because of a high fever. We dared not reveal our identities. Dared not speak to anyone. There were battles all along the way. People who died of starvation and those who didn't either rose in rebellion or became bandits. I was, after all, only 10 years old. My mother entrusted me with taking care of my brother. But I was powerless to do so. Barely surviving starvation was my limit. I had been deceived, beaten, and trafficked. I mingled among beggars. And on lucky days, I could get a day's worth of food. My brother devoured it beside me. I picked up a branch and silently transcribed records of the grand historian on the ground. My brother was abducted by human traffickers. I pretended to sell myself to bury my father. Selling myself. I used every trick to get the human trafficker drunk. Then broke his hands and feet. Looking back, my brother took a step back. His eyes filled with fear. Walking in the mountains. Unsure when a tiger would emerge and devour my brother and me. I made my brother recite the Book of Odes, telling him we would arrive in another month. At night, while keeping watch, I often silently recited a passage from Mencius, thus: when heaven is about to confer a great office upon a man, it first exercises his mind with suffering, and his sinews and bones with toil. It exposes his body to hunger, and subjects him to extreme poverty. It confounds his undertakings. By all these methods, it stimulates his mind, toughens his nature, and supplies his incompetencies. The 3-month journey took my brother and me 2 full years. I witnessed the vastness of the land, the prosperity of human society, the displacement of people, and the chaos of war. The person who picked me up trembled and slapped himself, weeping profusely. I'm sorry, child. I was too hungry. But the water didn't boil, and he died by the cooking pot. A little girl begging by the roadside broke off half of her steamed bun and gave it to me, whispering, I know there's a human trafficker down the street. I'll take you to find your brother later. The pampered young master, dressed in fine clothes, watched dogs attack people and laughed heartily. How dare these commoners fight with my beloved dog for food? The woman holding a child slammed her head against the yamen gates. Committing suicide. The bloated old official's face showed disgust. How unlucky. I lost my train of thought, rambling disjointedly. Feng Qing remained silent. After I finished speaking, tears streamed down his face. The wine was finished. I stood up and said, Master, you can leave tomorrow. I will reopen the Grand Justice and review old cases. If Master is willing, please assist me. If Master is unwilling, your wife and son are waiting for you to return home. I have been rude. Please forgive me. I turned and left. After a long time, suppressed sobs came from the prison cell. The next day, I ordered the Grand Justice to be reopened. My black-armored attendants struck the drum at the yamen gates. I told the onlookers, if you have any grievances, you may strike the drum to appeal. The common people only watched, their heads lowered, as if they dared not look at me. Master Feng is here, someone shouted. The crowd suddenly erupted like hot oil into which cold water had been poured. Master Feng, dressed in the official robes of the Grand Justice, his official hat neatly worn, was slowly approaching. He was a true gentleman, an honest official, A sincere scholar. And an upright official in the hearts of the common people. Feng Qing stopped and saluted the common people respectfully. He didn't need to say anything. Just by standing there, he embodied the will of the people.